She walked into the dentist's office on a rainy Monday morning, clutching her coat tight and keeping her head low. At first glance, she looked like just another patient, but when she finally sat down in the chair and opened her mouth, the dentist froze, every single tooth gone. Not broken, not decayed, just completely missing. No signs of trauma, no implants. Just smooth, healed gums, like her teeth had never been there at all. Dr. Keller, a kind and experienced dentist, had seen a lot over the years, but nothing like this. The woman, who called herself Maria, barely spoke, only nodding when asked. Basic questions. Something about her didn't sit right. She seemed scared, not of the procedure, but of something else. Someone else, as Dr. Keller tried to ask more questions. She quickly left, leaving behind a strange odor on the chair and a business card for a shelter that had closed years ago. That night, Dr. Keller couldn't sleep. His instincts told him something was terribly wrong. The next morning, curiosity and concern pushed him to follow the address she had given, only to find a lockdown building on the edge of town. Its windows boarded and cameras still working. He parked across the street, heart pounding. And just as he was about to leave, he saw a shadow slip behind the curtains on the second floor. What he found next would lead him to a truth darker than decay. Something no dentist could ever be prepared for. Dr. Keller couldn't shake the image of that shadow moving behind the window. The building looked abandoned, but there was no mistaking it. Someone was in there. He walked up to the old shelter's rusted gate, brushing past tall weeds and broken glass. The front door was sealed shut, so he circled around the back, finding a narrow stairwell that led to a basement entrance. As he stood there, unsure whether to go in, he noticed something carved into the Fram initials, faded, almost gone. But one set caught his eye. MR, could it be Maria's? He remembered that years ago, before the shelter closed, there had been stories in the news brief, mentions of neglect, missing reports, people disappearing. But nothing was ever proven, and the place was quietly shut down. Now, standing here, it felt like those headlines were more than just rumors. Inside, the building was dark and damp, with peeling paint and furniture covered in dust. But there were signs someone had been there recently: an old mattress, a can of food, and a flashlight still faintly warm. As he crept down a hallway, he heard soft humming. A voice, gentle but eerie, echoing off the walls. It sounded like a lullaby. He followed the sound until it stopped suddenly, replaced by complete silence. Then came a creak from upstairs. Dr. Keller froze, unsure whether to turn back or keep going. But deep down, he knew whatever happened to Maria didn't start at the dentist's chair. It started here. Dr. Keller took another cautious step forward, heart pounding louder with every creak of the old wooden floor. The air smelled of mildew and something faintly metallic. As he rounded the corner, he noticed a small door partially open, light flickering inside. He hesitated, then pushed it gently. Inside was a room filled with files, old, dusty records from when the shelter was still operating. But something was off. The files weren't just administrative. They had photos, notes, detailed reports about people who had stayed there. Some were marked with red ink, non-compliant, transferred, no record found. Maria's name wasn't there. But one file was missing from the drawer, ripped out. Meanwhile, a second story was unfolding. Across town, Maria sat in a dark motel room, her backpack pressed tightly to her chest. Inside it, she carried something the shelter had tried to keep, hidden, something they didn't want getting out. She hadn't meant to involve the dentist. But now that he'd followed her, she feared they would come after him too. Her hands trembled as she stared into the mirror, her reflection almost unrecognizable without her teeth. It wasn't just about the missing teeth, it was what they'd done to her while she was there. What they had taken. Back at the shelter, Dr. Keller heard a loud thud upstairs, followed by hurried footsteps. Someone else was in the building. He ducked into the file room, heart racing. The shelter wasn't abandoned after all. But whoever was there knew he had come looking. Dr. Keller pressed himself against the cold wall, holding his breath as the footsteps grew louder. They were deliberate, slow, but confident, like someone who knew the layout of the place far too well. A faint beam of light flickered under the door, sweeping back and forth as if searching. He glanced at the open file drawer, thinking quickly. If they found him here, they'd know he had seen something. Quietly, he slid one of the files into his coat pocket. Just one, and crouched low, inching toward a side door that led deeper into the building. On the other side of town, Maria was writing a letter by hand, something she hadn't done in years. She scribbled details, names, dates, what they did at the shelter, all of it. She knew if anything happened to her, someone had to know the truth. She placed the note under the mattress next to the small flash drive she'd kept hidden all. This time, her eyes flicked to the window, where a black car had parked and hadn't moved in hours. They had found her back in the shelter. Dr. Keller slipped down a back stairwell and found himself in what looked like a medical room only. It wasn't like any dental room he'd ever seen. There were trays with strange tools, restraints on the chairs, and cameras in the corners. A monitor blinked to life behind him. Footage, dozens of clips. And in one of them, clear as day, was Maria, sedated, surrounded by masked people. And someone else, someone he recognized. Dr. Keller stared at the screen, frozen. The video showed Maria strapped to a chair, unconscious, while masked figures moved around her. But it wasn't just the horror of the footage that stopped him. Cold it was the man in the corner of the screen, half hidden under a surgical cap, but unmistakable. It was Dr. Whitmore, his former mentor, a respected name in the dental community. The same man who had trained Keller years ago, who had suddenly retired and vanished from public view. Now here. He was involved in something dark, something beyond medicine. The screen flickered again, showing footage labeled with other names, some faces blurred, some clearly frightened. One clip showed a girl begging to leave, then cut out abruptly. Dr. Keller's mind raced. This wasn't just an abandoned shelter. It had been a cover. A place where people like Maria were taken under the guise of care and experimented on. But for what? And why the teeth? Suddenly, the monitor went black. Behind him, a faint mechanical click echoed in the hallway. The door he came through had locked. Then another sound, a voice, calm and steady, came through the intercom. "You should have stayed in your office, Dr. Keller." Across town, Maria's phone lit up, a blocked number. Her hands shook as she answered. He found it, didn't he? The voice on the other end was familiar, but distant. "Yes," it said, "and now we don't have much time." Maria grabbed the flash drive. Was happening again. Dr. Keller moved quickly, searching for a way out as the intercom crackled again. Footsteps echoed above him, more than one pair. He yanked open a utility closet and ducked inside, heart racing. In the shadows, he pulled out his phone and texted the only person who might believe him, Maria. Seconds later, his phone buzzed. A single word: run. But before he could move, the door creaked open. Dr. Whitmore stood there, older but with the same calm smile Keller remembered. "You were always too curious," he said quietly. "But curiosity has a cost." Just then, a loud crash rang out from above. Smoke filled the hallway. In the chaos, Maria appeared, flashlight in one hand, the flash drive in the other. "Come on," she shouted. Together they bolted through a side exit Keller hadn't noticed earlier. They didn't stop running until they reached the car Maria had waiting in the alley. Tires screeched as they sped off into the night. Later, at a safe house, Maria showed Keller what was on the flash drive: patient records, hidden footage, and lab notes. The files exposed everything. People had been taken under the guise of dental care, used for illegal research. Most never made it out. But Maria did, barely just as they began preparing to send the evidence to the authorities. Keller noticed something odd. One of the files had a timestamp from just 2 days ago. A new patient, a new location. The shelter wasn't shut down. It had simply moved. Maria and Dr. Keller sat in silence, the flash drive resting between them like a loaded weapon. They both knew exposing this meant putting themselves in danger, but hiding it meant letting others suffer the same fate. With trembling fingers, Maria sent the files to multiple news outlets, medical boards, and an attorney she trusted. Within hours, the story began spreading. Whistleblower reports, secret footage, names. The truth was finally out. Police raided the newly relocated facility days later. Though most of the people involved had vanished, evidence was recovered. The illegal dental research ring, masked as charity care, was linked to several missing persons cases across the state. Dr. Whitmore's face, once seen on medical journals, now flashed across TV screens as part of an ongoing investigation. The case shocked the country. Maria chose to remain off the grid, but she stayed in contact with Keller, who returned to his practice quietly. He no longer saw dentistry the same way. Every patient, every story, they all mattered more than ever. As for Maria, she began speaking to survivor advocacy groups under a new name, turning her trauma into something powerful.